Hi there YouTube, Extreme Trains here. If you had told me all those years ago when I picked up the re-released Tomics N-Scale Thomas that in 2024 I would be watching a Bachmann N-Scale Gordon be released, given how much it was hyped in Tomics and never happened, I probably would have laughed at you. But now it is so exciting to finally have this on my review table in front of me, the Bachmann N-Scale Gordon. Apparently it was released to the world at the same time it was released to the USA, which meant it was on shipping containers coming to Australia when it was available to purchase in the US. That meant that it didn't arrive in Australia until just before Christmas. The shop that I pre-order my Bachmann N-Scale items from, incredibly helpful, very, very friendly, highly recommend. They didn't receive their shipment till Christmas Eve, so it only just managed to get through the backlog and be shipped out to me this week. So, while I may be one of the last people on YouTube to review this item, hopefully you'll stick around and we can have a discussion about how it works, particularly whether it works on this layout behind me, which you'll know is not made as well as it probably could have been if I had known better at the time, and otherwise what I think about it in relation to some of the other Bachmann items, which I've generally found to be pretty darn good. So, what are you waiting for? Let's do it. Okay, this is a pretty standard Bachmann box. You can see we've got Thomas & Friends Gordon Express Engine. Just the plastic hard packaging. You can see we've got the Gordon Express Engine item number on the side. N-Scale Thomas & Friends. Sticker on the back with the usual branding, copyright 2024. This is on the bottom. So very, very usual, and again, much higher quality than the HO versions, which have, you know, pretty much nothing to help you out in terms of reusable packaging. All right, let's get him open. Okay, you are getting my live, unfiltered reactions. I have not seen this out of the packaging until you have all seen it. As other people have talked about, a fantastic Gordon face. That is just stunning. I love the details on the buffers. You can see mine are a little bit crooked, perhaps, which is a bit unideal for something of this price, which we'll talk about later in the video. But again, in terms of looking at those details, they are fantastic. I know other people have had problems with details rubbing off on these. I haven't had this problem yet, touch wood, but I have had my Toby split, as you would have seen on my community tab, which I'll be talking about in another video. Again, no cab detailing. Somewhat disappointing, but also fine. I don't really care about that, to be honest. I don't see that. Love the whistle detailing up there. It is fantastic. The side detailing. The side rods look so, so good. I know some people are not happy with the fact the wheels aren't actually spoked. I understand that concern completely. I agree that it's disappointing and also weird that it's inconsistent. And for example, Emily does have spoked wheels, but then Gordon doesn't. And I think that's my more problem. If they want to stick to an aesthetic, they should just stick to one. If they're not going to be spoked, then don't spoke any of them. I think that is a bit weird. The other thing I've seen people concerned about is the cut off piston you can see on the inside. I suspect that's for the same reason as it is in the show, which is to allow this front bogie to move around, which you can see, like in the show, is attached at the back so that it should have plenty of movement. Otherwise, this looks so good. Love the little pony truck. I don't love this connection. I agree with some other people that a permanently coupled solution would probably be better, because I find this very hard to connect for James, and I suspect for Gordon it will be even worse. So, agree with that criticism 100%. I think a better connection would be appropriate. Coming out to the tender, again, this is all blank. I don't know why this is painted black. Perhaps someone could explain to me the reason for that, but this feels like it just should be blue. I don't really know why it's black. You do have some room to put some figures there if you would like. Otherwise, again, I think the tender looks fantastic. Love the wheels on here. Love all the detailing. I love this inclusion of these little parts. It's just, they really did understand the assignment, but again, you can see that my buffers have been screwed, or glued in, I should say, not straight, and they don't seem to be, like, they're glued in, so I don't seem to be able to twist them to make them right, and I'm a bit afraid to do that without breaking them. So again, like, these are the things which, attention to detail, Bachmann, you've got to get this stuff right. If you're going to have details, do them properly, but I like the addition of the brake hose and the dummy couplings. And then again, we've also got this section here painted black. Is that correct? I'm going to get some reference photos up here on the screen now of Gordon's tender, if I can find some. So you will know watching this video whether it's correct before I do. But yeah, that to me is a bit of an unusual paint detail to include. I think they were trying to increase the kind of shadowing on it, but yeah, I just don't know if that is right. And it kind of looks a bit funny. But overall, as with the other Bachmann engines, this detailing is fantastic. He looks really, really good. He's very impressive, much larger than the other engines in this lineup. So we've seen him in hand. I don't have any concerns aside from those small issues with them, the details not being properly applied. And again, the question about the wheels being right. But otherwise, no concerns per se with the detailing. So let's get him onto the track and see how he looks running. Okay, so as you can see, Gordon looks fantastic on the layout. I have not run him in properly yet, as in I haven't run him in, for 30 minutes in each direction, but I have been running around this layout, which is notoriously dirty and obviously quite hilly, and he has been running very, very well. In terms of the type radius curves, which if you know about the history of this layout, I built this using what came with the Tomas set, and it included, and we can see them here, these, I think they're mini radius Tomics track curves, which are like radius 1, I think, or perhaps even tighter, which cause issues for engines in terms of both the traction, because there's a lot of pressure on the wheels, and also just working. So bogeyed coaches, for example, don't work on this layout. There's a corner here, and there's also one over there in the corner where the station is, and just in front of the windmill where you can focus in now. Yep, you can see it over there. So I had a lot of questions about whether Gordon was going to work on this layout. The answer is he works on the just, without derailing, on the flat section of that radius 1 curved track, but he does not work on the uphill/downhill section. He does derail. So unfortunately, Gordon does not really work on my layout properly, which is sad because he looks fantastic on the sections he does run on. And as with all the Bachmann engines, he seems to run very, very well. Not a lot of problems with dirt. I appreciate that people are saying, it's a bit unacceptable that he only has his driving wheels picking up, but in my experience, it hasn't caused any problems in terms of reliability. He's very smooth, very responsive, just like all the other Bachmann engines. It seems like quite a high quality mechanism. That said, what I can tell you from having run this around a little bit is Gordon is the first engine or piece of rolling stock I've owned where I felt the need to use a re-railer. Normally, I'm able to get the engines onto the track without one. Gordon is not one of those engines. He's very, very fiddly to get onto the track, and that is not helped by the absolutely rubbish coupling between Gordon and his tender. I found it very, very frustrating trying to couple him up and uncouple him and move him around when I needed to move him around. So definitely minus points for that coupling. I wasn't as bothered by James, I think, because James is a smaller engine, but certainly for Gordon, he is really, really annoying, and I'm a little bit, I'm definitely disappointed that they haven't found a better coupling solution. But otherwise, I have no problems recommending this Gordon in terms of how it's running so far, in terms of how it looks. I'll play some shots of him running as well. Obviously, can't wait to get the express coaches to go with him. But as I've just said, this layout is not really compatible with Gordon. And so in order to make him and also my N-scale 3801 work, I'm going to have to make a new layout. I did look into, over this New Year's Christmas break, remodeling the layout I've already got to incorporate the less tight curves, but it just wasn't working. There's just not enough space without destroying the whole thing, to be honest. So I'm going to instead, as my project for 2025, is going to be to make a new layout that is tender engine, and also eventually when the Gordon's coaches come out, coach compatible, that will have no hills and also will not have as tight curves. But anyway, you live and you learn. So that's enough of me yapping. I'll show you some footage of Gordon running around the track, and then we'll come back with some final thoughts. wondering, you can see here, I don't know whether it's going to show super well on camera, as Gordon comes into that first radius curve, you can see how his front bogie wheel has derailed, and so if I reverse him very slowly, you should see that go back onto the track. Yeah, see how it's derailed? And now it's back on the line, but if he goes any further through that very tight curve, he does not make it. So while I think he's compatible with radius 1, he's not compatible with like the mini radius, which again is frustrating, because I used this because it came in the Thomas set that I bought back in the day when the Tomics in scale engines were being released. But anyway, here we are. Alright, you've seen some pictures of Gordon running, you've also seen some stills of him looking fantastic. What is my final thoughts, or what are my final thoughts on the Bachmann N-Scale Gordon? Overall, I think it's a fantastic entry into the Bachmann N-Scale line. I think once again, a very well and faithfully designed model is underpinned by a relatively good mechanism that seems to work quite well, even on difficult layouts like mine, subject to, of course, the fact that because he's a big engine, he doesn't make it around those very tight curves, but that is not Bachmann's fault, and it is certainly not something to hold against this engine. While some of the small details I think are not quite right, and I appreciate people's concerns about both the coupling mechanism, which I agree with 100%, and also the wheels, which while again I don't necessarily have a view either way, I am annoyed that there's no consistency between the way this is done. The big thing I think that is the big caveat to everything I've talked about, and is generally what I've been saying this whole time looking at these N-scale items, comes down to the price. So in Australia, the recommended retail price of this is 295 Australian dollars. Now, people in the comments will tell me, and other YouTubers will say, why do you buy Bachmann at full price? It's meant to be discounted. That's why it's so expensive. Well, retailers, at least in Australia, do not take that approach. And whether that is because Bachmann, the exporter, doesn't tell them to do that, or whether it's because they don't actually have that built into their prices in other regions, I don't know. But you will not find Bachmann items in Australia discounted of day one when they're released, like you see, for example, in the UK and also in the US. So I had to pay, yes, almost 300 Australian dollars for this Gordon. And I think that is where I have some questions as to those little misses. Another miss in my mind for an engine that's now costing about $300 is options for digital decoder fitting. And of course, you know, I don't expect Gordon to have it, and particularly I don't expect him to have sounds, because that would be a whole another kettle of fish to get licensing, etc. But I think when you're talking about these models and you're charging these prices, these are not toy train prices. This is not a toy train scale. These are model train prices in a model train scale. And I think you should give people the option to be able to chip these so that they can run them with their other items, particularly in a world where digital, even at N scale, is, you know, as far as I understand it, pretty much the norm. There's no reason why they couldn't have fit a decoder in Gordon, and particularly in his tender. And that, again, I think would have made Bachmann take the steps to do a proper coupling, because the coupling connection between Gordon and his tender is so annoying to deal with, and it's a really frustrating factor on what is otherwise quite a frustration-free model. So that's my thoughts on this item. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Obviously, I haven't gone into as much depth as some other YouTubers in terms of talking about the mechanism, taking him apart, all that kind of thing. I encourage you to look at other reviews to get that information. This is my take on Gordon, and as I said, I'd love to say he would be appearing at other places on my channel soon. Probably not, given he doesn't work on my layout properly, but stay tuned for the project for 2025, which is to create a new layout that's compatible with all of my N-scale engines. All right, thank you very much for watching. This is a bit of a long video. As always, that's a good time for this Extreme Trains.